Welcome to Art Slice, a different dive into art and art history. We goof around, we curse, you'll learn from it, but don't expect a typical lecture. You're welcome.
Also, subscribe.
It's up there. Is it up there?
Subscribe.
Just subscribe. Do it.
And click the bell.
Thanks. Welcome to Art Slice, a podcastable and now YouTubeable serving of art history. I am Stephanie Duenas.
I'm Russell Shoemaker, and today... Oh, shit, hold on.
Okay. All right. Listeners, we are so happy to be back for Season 2 of Art Slice. We really hadn't planned on doing seasons, but we're calling everything before this episode Season 1.
Right.
We are hoping this works better for us, so thank you for hanging in there. We originally intended to cover Goya's Los Caprichos back in December as part of a creature double feature with Paulina Peavy, but we found
It was foolish.
that was not enough time for us to really dig in.
Completely foolish.
It was very foolish.
Well, anyway, I don't know if you saw, this is Matrix AI Bryan.
Hi, Matrix AI Bryan.
He is going to help us write Season 2.
Okay.
Or just write Season 2 for us.
Okay, great.
Well, he's printing out. So, I mean, the thing about these new... okay. Here we go. Hold on. I gotta reach it. Okay.
Post number 1.
Okay. Welcome to our podcast where we discuss various works of art and their historical significance. Today, we're going to be talking about Francisco Goya's series of satirical etchings with a critical twist, Los Caprichos. Just reach for it.
Paper jam! Okay. That's right. Goya's Los Caprichos is a series of 80 prints that were created between 1797 and 1799. They depict a variety of scenes from everyday life in 18th century Spain, but with a satirical and critical twist.
Oh, Jesus. It's just so much paper. I don't know. Exactly. Goya was a master of satire and used Los Caprichos to comment on the society of his time. He criticized the church, the government, but also targeted societal issues like superstition, ignorance, and poverty. Jesus.
Yes. Goya's use of light and shadow is masterful, and it creates a sense of ambiguity and uncertainty in his prints. This invites the viewer to view and question and interpret scenes in their own way.
Oh, is it my time? Is it my time? Okay. Absolutely. One of the most striking things about Los Caprichos is the way that Goya uses light and shadow to create a sense of mystery and unease. He uses this technique to draw the viewer in and make them question the scenes they are looking at.
That's right. The critical satire of Los Caprichos was considered controversial, and it was not widely accepted by the public or the critics of his time. But despite this, it remains one of Goya's most important works. It continues to be highly respected and admired today.
That's right. Oh God.
And is that it?
Another interesting thing about Los Caprichos is that it was not well received during its time. Goya faced a lot of criticism, and the series was even banned by the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
And that's all for us today. Thank you for listening and watching. Join us next time as we discuss another work of art and its historical significance. Please consider joining our Patreon at patreon.com/artslicepod or make a one-time donation at artslicepod.com/support.
Is that it?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that was like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I don't think we need that.
Okay.
No offense. I don't think we need
No,
that.
I'm not willing to give up on Chat AI Bryan yet.
Right.
Yet. Okay.
Right. So we'll put that on pause.
Yeah, we'll get back to the drawing board.
Right. Until then,
the circuit board.
listeners, we find ourselves in 18th century Spain.
Power down.
The last time we were here, it was just a couple of centuries earlier when we covered the Greek transplant El Greco.
El Greco, yeah.
In episode 16.
A cog in the old big budget rebrand when the Roman Catholic Church rebranded as the RC squared, if you all remember that, in order to get in between the ears and eyes of average folks. So they would not be swayed, Stephanie, by that trendy, minimalistic, hashtag Protestant lifestyle, hashtag Protestant brainworms, hashtag RC square cord, hashtag RC squared aesthetic, hashtag Eucharist core.
No.
In the course of said rebrand, the RC squared dictated the trajectory of many artists' careers like El Greco here, but also dictated the lives of people in general, including the indigenous people of the, quote, New World. Maybe it goes back to being ruled by a group of diverse non-whiteys oft referred to as the Moops for hundreds of years, or just being cunning enough to keep the indigenous who knew the land the best. You know, because they knew how to produce sugar and hopefully, knew where all the gold was. But when the Spanish conquistador the Americas, the Philippines, Guam, Africa, a big old hefty chunk of the Caribbean, like 3 pie slices worth, it wasn't great for the indigenous folks. They endured all sorts of brutality. They suffered from imported diseases, but they did stop well short of the near total genocide that the enlightened George Washington manifested on the indigenous of North America.
For the conquistadors, if you were okay with assimilating, worshiping their god, and letting them keep your resources, RC Squares HR would welcome you with open arms, to boost their diversity and inclusion mission statement, and also to build their missions.
They need a little hand there, huh?
So this is all to say that Spain was an imperial powerhouse, okay? Their colonizer touch is why Spanish is the world's second most spoken native language, right after Mandarin Chinese. So you remember Frida and Diego and their interest in archaeology? Well, they were trying to bring back some of that pre-conquistador Mexican indigenous culture that was either altered, forgotten, or even completely lost at that time. But if we rewind to around Goya's time, around the time he enters the picture, the Spanish have committed a couple centuries worth of oopsies. Oopsies. Yeah. The blowback from being powerful for so long.
Too long.
It all starts to add up, and their egos in their pockets got a little too big, a little too heavy.
A little jingle jangle in their pockets, kind of swaying.
A little too much. They're kind of spilling it everywhere. They're making a mess.
Yeah.
They didn't industrialize like England and France, and they slowly lost territories, trade routes, military power. Super embarrassing. And of course, there was mucho monarch inbreeding.
Yummy. Make some interesting faces. So it's a whole monster factory for the ruling class.
So throw in some good old-fashioned racism and the Spanish Inquisition's notorious reputation across borders. It was all just giving vintage medieval.
Oh, nice.
Not
nice.
good.
Little throwback, right? The good old days. Red hats. Make Spain medieval again, okay? Except then it would you could shake the little red hat to attract los toros. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so all that, throw it in a blender, and by the 17th century, Spain inevitably gets a bad reputation. Not like Joan Jett cool, not like that. It's more like bumpkin or backwards.
Okay.
Like backwards Eurobillies, if you will, right? Backwards Eurobillies. I like that.
Yeah. They're outside of the Petro station selling bathtub sangria. I like that.
Yeah, I guess so. We could do that. Sure.
Yeah, it's in like a used wine bottle,
We're recycling. Sorry.
We washed it.
Upcycling. Oh, okay. All right.
Sven over here spit on it. A couple times, polish it up. Okay, but now there was a new breed of bad boys who were, Stephanie, outfluencing the RC squared influencers on Spanish soil, no less. And it was seeping in from those Euro Billy borders, okay? Hidden under probably some floppy, dusty wigs. Okay? We're talking, of course, about the Enlightenment. In all its various shapes and flavors, it finally arrived, all right? It pulled up its male corset. It wrapped its cane against Spain's door, which is kind of creaky. And just on like one hinge, maybe. It's kind of pulling away from the door jamb because it's not, well upkept.
Yeah, right.
And Goya was about to live through one of the most tumultuous times. Tumultuous? I can't say it. Tumultuous. Times in Spanish history as Spain would desperately try to maintain its power in this new Enlightenment era.
But before we get into all of that, listeners, we're going to take a look at a later work of Goya's that we think highlights those feelings of chaos hidden just below Spain's surface. Okay, we have Entierro de la Sardina, aka the burial of the sardine.
Un sardina.
Yes.
One sardine.
Good job. Yeah. Yes. So most scholars think that it dates somewhere between 1810 and 1819. It is oil on panel. And like with so much of Goya's work, you're just hit with an information overload. Like what first looks like a Mardi Gras level festival.
Yeah, I'm getting like Ren Fair with a little like Burning Man mixed in.
Right. I don't see any fire yet.
Yet.
Correct. So it's a dim, almost overcast day where the blue sky is just peeking through the clouds and the landscape details just kind of get lost in this like low contrast sort of grayish fuzz.
In that dim fuzz, right? Trees and earth meld into the gray sky. Awesome. This festival, the sea of people parading, rallying, dancing are also lost in that grayness within that fuzz, that gray fuzz, that fuzzy gray, which forces your eyes to really look at that fuzz. Just don't get the fuzz in your eyes.
Don't do that. No bueno.
Yeah, that's a trip to the doctor. And that's where you start to see past the surface because it is this uncanny valley, horrorcore, weird type of aesthetic. The crowd are all wearing like human enough masks. Yep. We have dolls, we have devils, bullfighters, and a Gamera cosplayer who I think like wandered in from KaijuCon, and they all have like these crudely cut eye holes. So they kind of seem like these empty husk people.
And that's not even the worst part though. Like the worst part is that the crowd is hoisting this like giant ass banner of this very sinister smiling face that's ascending from darkness within the banner.
Yeah, it's Trump-esque.
It is very Trump-esque.
It's got that Trump grin.
But the more you look around, the more foolish everyone seems to be, right? It's like they're not in sync at all. Like there's no rhythm. It's chaotic and it gives me anxiety. It's giving anxiety.
But these are the best kind of dance parties because I don't want to learn how to dance any sort of like choreographed thing.
So you'll fit right in.
Yeah, I would like this. To me, this is like I can just do whatever I want to. They're not going to judge me, right?
No one's going to notice.
No one's going to notice my bad dancing. I got a mask on. We're good. We're good here. No one knows that I came in from KaijuCon in my Gamera costume. Okay. The paint gives away Goya's feelings on this scene, though, right?
Yeah.
So more so than just the illustration of this event, parts accumulate to defined shapes while others are scattered and vague, kind of like a memory mark of movement, which gives this feeling of a very unpredictable drunken crowd, like you were saying, who could start moshing at any moment, which is an extreme interpretation on Goya's part, but importantly, an interpretation. So he's making an interpretation.
Right. So according to the title, this is the festival of the burial of the sardine, right? Where these joyous folks are on their way to bury a sardine, dancing out of sync, with their crudely cut eye hole masks. Yes, they're on their way to do that. Yeah. So some say that this festival evolved from a pagan celebration, and some say it's tied to Lent and Roman Catholicism. Others date it to King Carlos III, who tried to supply sardines to the hungry, but the sardines that he procured had gone rancid. How nice.
Well, sardines are pretty small, so they're not really going to feed that many people.
Yeah, a lot of them.
Yeah. That is a snack at best. Just staving off the hyperglycemia.
God. With said rancid sardines, they made a festival out of burying them, right? To take their mind off of their hungry tummies.
Yeah, you don't feel the hunger when you're dancing, I guess. Or drunk.
Or high out of your mind. Don't know. Either way, today, a big sardine effigy is buried in fire instead of dirt. At the conclusion of the event. Like, this is still this still is celebrated today.
Right. So it is called, obviously, the burial of the sardine, whatever you called it. But in the painting, there is not a sardine in sight. Not un sardina, okay? Not even un at this burning Dean, right? And that's because Goya is doing a little bit of editorializing here. In his original drawing for the painting, that banner with that disturbing mask had the image of the sardine on it with the inscription mortis, so death, which is probably why historians named this piece after the fact. I'm not actually sure if this was actually named by Goya, right? So Goya replaced the death sardine with the sinister face of the Greek god Momus, which, if you've never heard of him,
no,
I haven't either.
Nope.
So he's the patron god of satire and mockery who uses humor to satirize and criticize. And the mod gods had to kick him out of Mount Olympus because he was a troll.
He's the troll god.
It almost seems like he is the personification of this crowd, right? His trickery is possessing this crowd. That's why they're dancing like idiots. And he's just, rolling on his troll cloud in the heavens, probably under a new handle.
And this is the complex sort of mental riddle that Goya is so good at, right? It's almost impossible to take his work at face value, though, because that face could be a mask or it could be an AI rendering. Francisco José de Goya y Lucientes was born in 1746 in northeastern Spain, not in the Spain that you might think of today with flamenco dancers, tapas, gazpacho, sangrias, sexy beaches. Think more ornate bridges and stunning mudéjar architecture in, more specifically, Zaragoza, a bustling city between two mountainous regions. Just a few centuries earlier, Spain had been under Muslim rule from 711 AD post-BBJ until 1492. The mudéjar in mudéjar architecture is an Arabic phrase meaning those who stayed in reference to said Muslims after this particular part of Spain was taken back by the Christians in the 12th century. So those who stayed influenced local architecture through the blending of Arabic patterning and ornamentation on Catholic churches. Speaking of Catholic churches, RC squared is still big at this time. Still pretty, is it prevalent? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Prevalent.
Like they got the big churches, they got the money, they're throwing it around.
Yep,
okay.
Like chump change,
right.
Exactly. Because they still want to build, and gild, okay? And Goya's papa just so happened to be a master gilder, staying busy, gilding frames, altarpieces, anything he could get his little hands on.
Anything you can gild, little dogs, little dog shoes.
You could say he had the Midas touch.
Yeah, to some degree, yes.
So speaking of touch, art and craft was a much needed trade at this time, and Papa G was successful, and he wanted to make sure that his children had every opportunity to follow in his footsteps. By the age of 14, Bibi Goya was already making pretty impressive paintings. Early on, he was especially influenced by the hot new Neapolitan style. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, you can think of Neapolitan style as following Caravaggio, the murderer. So the work was dramatically lit. It was naturalist, right? It was less exaggerated than, like El Greco or Bernini.
So it's still cinematic, though, but not like Big Lap Long Baby cinematic. Not like Pixar. More like, I don't know, Paramount Plus. I don't know. I can't think of another like
I don't know.
Like a regular old TV show.
I don't know either.
Just a regular
Just a regular lit TV
regular
show.
lighting, regular people.
Classic.
Regular.
Standard.
Regular.
Estándar.
Yeah.
Okay. Neapolitan art wasn't the only style at this time. It just happened to be one of the newest. In Zaragoza alone, like we said, there was Islamic art that you could see in the ornament, design, and mosaics. But there was also all sorts of other mediums and movements, including medieval, Romanesque, Renaissance, Mannerist, Gothic, Baroque, okay? And there was even a steady trickle of Rococo working its way over via the French upper classes, right?
Okay.
So as Goya continues to study and improve his skills, he decides to make the long-ass 200-mile trek south to the new-ish city, the newish court city of Madrid. So he's living in the influence and shadows of all of these giant art movements from both of these cities, okay? And while Goya is progressing and improving as an artist, career-wise, things are not panning out for him. By the age of 24, he's having a midlife crisis.
I think the life expectancy was the mid-30s, so at the age of 24, he was having not a midlife crisis, almost an end-of-life crisis. Okay.
Right, so he's on the verge of not making it, right? And maybe dying soon, maybe.
Very soon.
Right,
yeah.
Like tomorrow. So at this point, he has not lost one, but two drawing competitions. And that's a pretty big deal at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's not a good way to end your life. You don't want to be staring at like your art rejection letter by your bedside table as your heart gives way to all the, I don't know, whatever kills you back then. I guess everything kills you back then.
Right. And also, him losing these competitions, it means that he would not be admitted to the Royal Academy of Fine Arts of San Fernando, which is where artists like Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso, and Remedios Varo would later attend, like centuries later. But this is a really big problem from someone who should be on track to have like a professional career as an artist. Like this is not.
I mean, his daddy was a gilder. He's got to follow in the footsteps, the gilded footsteps.
That's extra pressure.
Right.
Correct. So he's thinking, you know what? I have to go now. I have to go be in the shadow of even gianter giants. I'm going to go study in Italy. Whoa, ciao. Nobody saw that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the soil is fertile there, right? The Renaissance, the Mannerist, the Baroque's soil.
Yeah.
He's going to go like roll around in that art soil. Yeah. Like kick up dirt on him. Yeah.
Like
plant himself like a little flower.
Like the dogs do. Yeah, plant himself. Or maybe he was hoping it would give him some clout, right? Or at least some connections, right? Some networking.
Right. He's he's psychologically trying to impress those judges.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it says here that you studied in Italy.
Oh,
Italy.
Oh. Either way.
Oh. Italy.
Oh. Either way, it does pay off, okay? He wins second place in a painting competition in Italy.
Yeah.
And decides, you know what, that's enough clout.
It says here he won second place. Mm-hmm. But he won second place in Italy.
Second place. Italy. Goya says, my work here is finito.
Yeah,
I'm done.
So he dusts off the fertile soil, the fertile soil that these art worms have been aerating his fertile body with. So the roots of art can burrow deep within him.
Right.
There's like little like art pups breaking the surface of his skin.
Like plants?
Yeah.
That's right.
Little pups.
That's super cute. So with all that in mind.
Painful too. Yeah.
But it's like good for him.
It is good to aerate your skin.
Right.
Yeah.
So with all
worms.
Okay.
Artworms.
I like artworms. Okay. So he's got this whole ecosystem now. Yeah. He's like, I can return to Spain now and begin again my career as an artist. Yeah. Okay. And so he does. He begins working in a studio of a well-known painter at the time, Francisco Bayou y Subias.
Yeah, Subaru, right? He marries Subaru's sister, maybe for love, maybe for a little job security, maybe a little bit of both.
Then Francisco's studio, the guy who owns the studio, not
Subaru.
Goya.
Yeah.
Subaru gets a major contract, and before Goya knew it, he was working for the Spanish royal court.
Okay.
All right, so while that isn't the best paying job out there, this was still essentially making it as an artist.
It's not gilding money, but it's close.
It could be. It could be because it kind of ensured that Goya would be able to find steady work the rest of his life, right? Through his connection that he now has to the monarchy. And he's also about to put that life expectancy to shame. Okay.
So he's going to live a long time.
He's going to double, almost triple it. Okay. But for his first assignment, he starts off making humble tapestry cartoons. Okay. The tapestries would then be hung, to like spruce up royal palaces, maybe keep those damn castle walls a little bit warmer. Now, when you hear tapestries in cartoons...
Yeah, I think of my favorite fleece blanket as a child with Space Jam on it. Michael, Taz, Sylvester.
The whole gang.
Bugs, yeah.
The cartoons are not what we would call cartoons today. They're basically like simplified paintings for a team of tapestry weavers to work from.
Right. Like there's a woman in the sun and her biff is like holding an umbrella to shade her.
What's a biff?
Her biff. And then there's a little cat on her lap, on her big lap. She does have a big lap. I know you said no more big laps, but I'm looking at a big lap right now.
So the weavers would use this cartoonified source to start their very complex and process-oriented weaving technique.
But yeah, I mean, it's simplified to a degree. Yeah. It's still very complicated. Mm-hmm. I think the name cartoon gives this idea that these were really easy to make. Their cartoons are easy to just like, pump out on your iPad or whatever. But a lot of these cartoons were around like 10 foot tall. These are huge. If you've seen tapestries at a museum, they're enormous.
Yep. What kind of imagery would a royal want on said tapestry? You might be wondering, listeners. What would they want to surround themselves with?
I think images of the pores, right?
Yeah, basically.
It's kind of like a Rolodex. They just want to see what the pores are up to. Without actually going and interacting with them.
Right. Because that would...
It's Vaseline-colored lenses or whatever.
Vaseline, I don't know. Rose-tinted colored glasses.
Vaseline-covered rose-tinted glasses. Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting.
Real greasy and red and thorny.
And what?
And thorny.
Okay, thorny. Yeah. I was like...
Every rose has thorns.
Basically, they are genre paintings, right? They're images of casual, leisurely activities of a variety of ages and social classes. Russell, would you like to describe this first tapestry cartoon?
Okay, show it to me. What's this? Okay. Okay.
Are you okay there?
Okay. I'm sorry, give me a second here. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we have a very idyllic spring day here with 4 well-dressed ladies, all holding like an 18th century trampoline. They're like trying to catch someone, like jump, like the one you would try to catch someone jumping out of a burning building, right? But then it's kind of fun, so they just keep bouncing people. And the person they are bouncing is like a noodly boy.
Yeah.
His body's very limp.
Yeah.
Any bones that he has are offering very little in terms of structure here. And then Noodle Boy's face is a mask, like a Guy Fawkes kind of mask, but like Guy Fawkes is a preteen with like rosy cheeks because he's embarrassed and a rosy chin. And of course, a very like ornate lip gloss situation.
Okay. Noodle Boy's name, he has a name, is El Pelele.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so he's a straw mannequin.
Oh.
Dressed up as a fancy boy, fancy lad.
He is a fancy lad for sure.
So this whole situation on said tapestry that you've described is an example of the Rococo influence that was making its way into Spain due to French sensibilities infiltrating the royal court. We do see a bit of whimsical sort of hints at sexual undertones.
He's got those rosy cheeks. He's embarrassed.
All of that we might also find in a Rococo painting a la Fragonard.
I mean, Noodle Lele has been friend-zoned here. I think he's fallen in love with these girls who are bouncing him. He's awkward. That's why he's blushing. He's got a Guy Fawkes poster in his dorm room. That's why he's wearing the mask. He's that kind of guy. Okay. He has hot, embarrassed cheeks. It's palpable. And but these gals are just kind of using him for fun, I think. Right?
Oh,
yeah, that's the friend zone. The bounce zone. Okay. The bouncy zone.
Bouncy zone.
Yeah.
What's really noticeable here is that this scene is not religious, okay? It is totally secular. Totally secular. It's devoid of religion and spirituality, right? Which is a pretty big change from what we might have expected from this time.
I mean, El Pelele is looking towards the heavens.
This was a royal commission, right? The royals asked for this. This was a special request for El Rey, okay?
Okay, so out with the Jesuses, on with the Peleles.
Sí.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, listeners, we have another tapestry called La Acerolera from 1778, aka the Cherry Cellar.
Okay.
So we have a fashionable woman offering up her wares, her cherries.
She's very like spindly. Like
She's got to be active. She's like, you want my cerezas? You want my cherries? Actually, they're not cerezas.
You want my... Goya doesn't know much about spines. That's all I'm trying to say. Or people had fucked up spines back then, and that's why they kept dying at 30.
You know, you're right. She's at a weird angle, but that's fine. It's dynamic. Okay, so she's offering up her cherries to a gaggle of common folk. Some of them are in like snazzier wear than others. There's this little perrito, this little dog doing doggo things, you know, like patiently waiting for snacks to drop from the bushel.
Right.
It's a very pleasant day. It's beautiful out. There's this little like patio umbrella, outdoor umbrella situation.
Yeah, it's a hipster bar.
Like there's a table.
Yeah, it's like Chip and Joanne would design that next to a silo and charge like $500,000 for it.
Right. However, it is important to note there are no noodle mannequins in sight.
No palettes?
No, just
there might be in the distance.
Just fashionable people. I'm not looking that hard.
There's a distance there. I could see it if I squint. You know.
I don't see it.
But if we compare Goya's original cartoon to the Weaver's vision, the cartoon has more people conversing outside. There are more atmospheric shadows. Overall, Goya's scene makes a lot more sense. It's a more fleshed out story.
Yeah.
Cherry seller sees gaggle of people and thinks, with all these people here, I'm bound to sell my wares, my cherries. Hey, did I see a polele bouncing in the distance? No, that's stupid. Why would I see that? Time to sell some cherries. But those details were all omitted by the Weavers because, again, wiving is very complicated. Okay, how are they going to wiv all those people congregating in the atmospheric distance? It's going to get all jammed up in their little wiv grid. Wiv grid. It's hard to say.
Whip grid.
Yeah, you can't say it.
It is. No, I can't. I fucked up. Okay. All right. So this was Goya's job for 16 years. Okay. So from 30 years of age to 46 years of age, Goya made 63 of these commissioned tapestries.
He is really outliving his senior citizen discount, you know? Like
it's the artworms. It's the artworms, the fertile.
The artworms. Yeah. It's like kombucha or some shit. Makes you live forever.
Ew. You might be thinking, whoa, okay, so like what went on in the interim between 30 to 46 years of age? Well, he was making all of these idyllic...
It's kind of Norman Rockwell-esque now that we're looking at them. They're very Norman Rockwell-esque. Positive images of Spanish populist life. Everyone is smiling. It's what the king and queen would expect to see. Remember those Vaseline-covered roses that are also a vision of which you look through.
Yes. Right. But... not long after this cartoon phase, Goya's paintings turn into Los Caprichos or Entierro de la Sardina, or worse yet, the black paintings.
Right. Like he's going from Norman Rockwell to his dark Gary Larson phase. Yeah. For me, though, it's already in the El Pelele, the dark Gary Larson humor, Noodle Boy, Noodle Pelele. Most historians say this is an analogy for love. Sure, the Pelele. But it has like kind of like a second take to it.
Dark spin.
Right, there's like a dark spin to it. There are all these cracks in the Pelele facade, okay? He's telling two stories, I think. Yeah. One is this fun, these girls have this freak noodle mannequin wrapped around their fingers on a homemade trampoline, cumbia music playing in the background, typical Sunday, right? But the expressions on their faces are all exaggerated. One has kind of like a cruel look to her face. There's just some sort of empty pleasure here. This Pelele can be disposed of and forgotten about at any moment. They can just shove him in a trash can, right?
Yeah.
He has the little happy Guy Fawkes face, literally, painted on him. And for 16 years, Goya is painting happy faces onto Spanish scenery when the reality was much harder for people actually living it.
Right. If this painting was a print from Los Caprichos, I'm not even sure that we would bat an eye. Like it would fit right in.
Right.
It has that same undertone of just look a little bit longer, right? Pay attention to what's in the shadows and don't just accept things for what they seem because they never are.
Stephanie, let's take off our foppish wigs, kick off our high heels,
Please.
put this little cardboard crown on with some jewels kind of painted on, logos printed on it, right? And look several hundred years backwards in time to a darker time, a medievaler time, Orlando, Florida.
Oh, gosh.
Medieval times, the restaurant/entertainment center. You know what I'm talking about?
I think so, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Where we can escape our troubles, the invisible hand dragging our bodies through their finite days, to a simpler time, a feudaler time. Okay. Spectating as underpaid theater majors joust atop horses while we dip our dry baby carrots into goblets of hummus, awaiting the rest of the 3-course feast.
Jesus.
Okay. Unaware that soon this beautiful, bountiful societal order, Lele, will come unraveled, okay? First with a renaissance, okay, of curiosity, architecture, commissions of pornographic frescoes for cardinals' bathrooms, okay?
Right.
And slowly, eventually, with a scientific revolution, revolution, okay? And like any great shift in human history, it's never one or even a couple of things that cause dramatic changes.
Right.
It's more like the building of a hurricane, okay? All those building blocks for a hurricane, you need all these separate conditions to be just right. And in this case, the arrival of the printing press were those warm waters below the thunderstorm. People had more access to writings than ever before, and literacy was on the rise even within those petite bourgeoisie circles. Eventually, there were all these scientific ideas circulating, ideas that the universe and everything we interact with day in and day out were made up of this stuff, this tangible material stuff that behaved in certain ways. And like a clock could be taken apart so that you could see how it worked. Unless you're David Hume, in which case you have to keep checking the clock because at some point it could be like oatmeal or something, or like quinoa one day, just any like sort of grain-based stuff,
Got
The
it.
scientific process was then applied to sociology and philosophy, because if you could explode and unexplode all these material substances like gravity, planets, pulmonary arteries, why couldn't you use a similar process to examine superstitions, emotions, industry, slavery, mercantilism, societal orders in general, right? So picture this plain old map, and all of a sudden you see some disparate rivers and streams start to glow. A little day glow orange, right? And it starts spreading and connecting to the other rivers and creeks and eventually oceans until this plain old map it's glowing. This explosion of investigation and questioning why we do the things the way we do them was all led by a utopic notion that anyone and everyone were capable of being able to partake in this process of reason, that our mostly good human nature, if nurtured with a little bit of education, could unlock this little Spock inside of our brains. And he has like an Occam's phaser. Occam's phaser. Okay, which is a bit naive, but it sounds fine on paper, right? Unless you're like a king or a church. Then you may want to force like writers like Voltaire to become like a digital nomad, or you might, force Spinoza to lay low at his day job, cutting eyeglasses. I think that's what he did. He was like worked for lens crafters. However, that glowing map I mentioned, the Enlightenment writers appealed to the very upper echelons of society who thought of themselves as these very reasonable, rational, progressive people, right? They had Elizabeth Warren signs in their lawn. And wanted to do some good for the plebes as long as it didn't inconvenience them too much. Looking at you, petite bourgeoisie managerial class, which eventually would lead radical thinkers like Karl Marx and even Adam Smith to look at why the Enlightenment goals would or could become corruptible.
Enter newly appointed Spanish King Carlos III, who wasn't just another white guy in a white wig and heels. Okay, he was worldly. He was hip. He was cool. He was enlightened.
Yeah.
So listeners, remember when we said that Spain was seen as a country of just a bunch of backwards Eurobillies by many of those Enlightenment thinkers, right?
Yeah.
And this was possibly due to their lack of industry, their proximity to Africa, and the prevalence of the Spanish Inquisition. The times are a-changing, and King Carlos III was about to lead Spain into a new era. And it just
like the basketball brand.
What do you mean?
New era.
That's a basketball brand?
It's like some sort of sports brand. I don't know. Go on.
Sure. I could see.
Now I'm like worried that's not a thing and I'm just making it up. I'm pretty sure like somewhere in the recesses of my mind, New Era exists. So I think it does exist. I'm going to look it up. Go for it.
I feel like I can envision that embroidered logo. Yeah.
Logo.
Embroidered
It is. It's
logo.
real. It's real. It's a basketball cap company.
Yeah, I feel like I can
Baseball
picture
cap. I said basketball cap.
the sports cap.
Yeah.
I can.
They don't wear basketball cap. They don't wear caps in basketball.
Right. That would make sense. So, King Carlos III was part of one of the most powerful dynasties in Europe, Les Bourbons, the Bourbons, who actually helped fund the American Revolution, but not just to advance the Enlightenment, but also to stick it to the Brits.
Yeah, stick it to them in their beans and sausage breakfast. What the fuck? Beans and wieners for breakfast? I don't think so.
I always thought you were going to say beans and wiener breakfast breath.
That too. And tea for breakfast? What the fuck?
I like the scones situation, though.
Scones
I
are
like the
fine.
Scones.
Scones is okay.
Scones is okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So basically, King Carlos III got promoted from being the King of Naples originally, yes, southern Italy, to the King of Spain. Okay. So you know how like corporate companies will shift managers around from like branch to branch because someone gets promoted, they quit or they get fired.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, basically. So like the previous Spanish king, actually, he died in his 30s due to various ailments attributed to royal inbreeding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like the process.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Like during the process of inbreeding or just like from being inbred? Like he was a product of inbreeding or he was producing inbreeding?
He was a product of inbreeding.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So anyway, kingdom to kingdom, bourbon to bourbon brand.
Yeah.
Same. So back to King Carlos III being enlightened. He hired those who were down for enlightened change across the board, right? So agricultural, economic, industrial.
Okay.
This meant taking away power from RC squared and its Spanish Inquisition, which only made his reign stronger.
So he was taking the power away because he did not believe in it, but he also wanted the sort of strength of the RC squared.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So good old toxic persecution is now only the weapon of the monarchies.
Gotcha.
Right? So he also transferred his entire Italian entourage, right? Because he came from Naples.
From Naples.
From Maples or Naples?
Naples.
So he brought on over his chief minister. He brought over opera singers, pizza chefs probably, and probably some dukes.
Yeah, his little homies, Palermos. The off-brand of the little homies.
No.
The Italian off-brand of little homies, the Palermos.
God.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yes, basically.
Yeah. I remember those.
Easy to travel with.
Yeah, it's the same skin tone, so it's cool.
Oh my God. Oh, that's true. Oh my gosh, yes, definitely.
They trade in the long shorts and high socks for, a little apron, an Italian apron. Yeah. And a pizza, what are those things that get the pizzas out of the oven?
I don't know.
I don't know. They're pizza sized. Whatever.
Some gold jewelry, some pinky rings.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some hookers yelling at him. Some angry hooker. That's what I saw when I was in Naples. It was a dead rat and angry hookers. That's all I saw in Naples.
Any of that.
Okay.
I believe you.
No, you were there with me. I stepped over a giant dead rat, looked up, and this man was being yelled at by two Italian hookers.
I don't
Sex
remember
workers.
any of that. I don't remember any of that. I believe it happened.
Well,
I think
look, hey, that guy. I'm not yelling at them. Look. He probably didn't pay.
oh my God.
I hope they beat the shit out of him. That's all I'm gonna say. And they could have. They looked feisty.
I hope whoever needed comeuppance got their comeuppance. All right, I'll just leave
whoever
it at that.
needed the comeuppance, I hope they got their comeuppance.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like a Kermit the Frog, like wailing around, slapping everything in its direction.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm still not sure if it's comeuppance or comeuppance. I'm not sure. I think there's Muppets in there.
It's neither one of those.
Okay.
But we'll go with comeuppance. Anyway, so now the enlightened French, right, in France, right? The French in France.
Yeah.
They were really digging this king's entourage, right? His whole look.
Yeah, they were collecting his little homie, Palermos. I'm on their dashboard.
Gotta collect them all.
Yeah. They're looking around for quarters.
For the
machine.
Basically. So they're really into this Bourbon King, right? Because he's part of their brand situation, right? Also, though, Spain has mucho más nicer weather, okay? Like Southern California. Yep. So then 6 years later, after his promotion in 1765, there was a mass immigration of French folks from all walks of life, right? Entrepreneurs, diplomats, craftsmen, hairdressers, merchants, and influencers. They're all just thrusting their Frenchness upon an unsuspecting Spanish population.
Yeah. The lay I don't know how to say homies in
Leomies.
Yeah.
You just don't say the H. Leomies. I don't know. Oh, what was there people with the baguette?
I have baguette. I have croissant.
One of us is going to have a striped shirt. We get a mime. We have a mime.
You do have the mime. You definitely have the mime.
Yeah.
You have like a dirty cat who's better than everybody.
You have a starving artist.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. You got. I mean, they all are basically.
Can one of them be an Eiffel Tower? Just one of them is an Eiffel Tower.
Yeah.
With hands.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
All right. That's good. So they're going to start their own Lomies.
One's
line.
a cigarette, I think.
That's just the line.
Sorry.
Okay. No, I love it. Okay. All right. So all of those immigrants that I just mentioned, they all probably came with Enlightenment literature smuggled underneath those dusty French wigs because they were wearing wigs at this time. They made it fancy. They made it trendy.
Yeah.
Okay. They brought that literature over for the backwards ass Spaniards who cared about being afrancesados, right? Okay. Which actually meant Frenchified Spaniards, right? Okay. So if you were a Spanish person who was afrancesado, you were doing the French thing.
So this was a word
that
was used.
Oh, it's a word.
Okay.
I didn't make it up.
Okay.
That's I wish I could take credit for that one.
All right.
No. Despite this idea of turning Spain into a Mediterranean Paris, King Carlos III's Enlightenment reform and or France's influence didn't do anything to benefit the majority of the population, which were not bigwigs, right?
But they had bigwigs on, though.
Maybe, but they were mostly peasants and farmers. Okay. So you can't be tilling the fields with a wig. That's just not practical.
I mean, it soaks up some sweat, I think. Unless it's like a rayon sort of rayon.
A rayon blend.
Yeah.
It's just not. It's not giving I'm working hard. It's not giving efficiency, right?
It could, okay. Fair enough.
Okay, so back to the peasants and farmers, right? So their income went to pay debts to their landlord.
Like you do.
Like we still do, yes. Yeah. So life for them was still giving medieval Dark Ages, right?
Yeah, or 2023.
So on top of all of this, the influx of French immigrants were crowding already crowded cities like Madrid. So if you recall back to our El Greco episode, Madrid was the recently established capital court city. So this was only about 200 years before Goya. So Madrid was still developing, okay? And there wasn't a lot of separation, like physical separation between social classes.
Yeah, the gated communities were still developing, I assume.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. This mixing of the classes meant that all of them, high and low, were inevitably going to mingle when they were out and about. It's kind of like going to the mall and seeing the bougie kids at your school eating Chipotle at the food court. Everyone's just eyeballing each other, right? They probably couldn't help themselves.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Right? You see this?
Yeah.
You see it in your mind? The lower classes could literally see firsthand how hard the upper classes were simping for the French.
Yeah, the Fressificado. How do you say it? Frenchifados.
Afrancesados.
Papasados, Aeropasados.
Aeropasados, exactly. And the working class Spaniards saw this and were like, that's fucking lame.
Yeah.
Okay, we are not French. We're not French. We're going to do our own thing. So, in rejection of the French, Majismo was born, which, if that sounds like machismo to you...
To eris correctamundo.
Yes, kind of. The root of the word means to be aggressive, right? Both the men, majos, and majas were ladies. Both of them. They grew loud and feisty. Okay. So this was a new style, right? It was their own. It was basically street style. Specifically, the Majos were working class folks.
Okay.
The men were artisans and the women sold fruit and flowers, for example.
Well, this just goes back to my little homies, Majomies theory, right? So these are the Majomies.
Yeah.
Right.
We got another one.
So the little homies, Majomies, the Majomies, made appearances on those royal tapestries, those Goya cartoons, you know? Mm-hmm. And Goya was probably like collecting them in his windowsill, okay? Buenas noches, little Pelele.
There was a Pelele one?
Yeah, we had to pin him to the wall so he's in the air.
Okay, that is adorable. All right, so back to the Majos. So while they could actually afford to take a day off, they still lived a hard life, right? They were still at the bottom of the social ladder.
But they looked good.
Right.
Yeah. Correct.
But this autonomy allowed them to spend some of that disposable income on some fly looks.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to talk about their looks.
This guy has like a Rue 21 bucket hat situation.
No. Yeah. No, this is not a bucket hat.
This is the Rue 21 to the era Stapapopoulos.
No.
This is where Pelele could afford to shop.
No.
It's a knockoff. Fast fashion.
Okay. All right. So men wore a long cloak, right? Flung over the shoulder. Like they wore soft brimmed hats. Okay. They were kind of like a square beret situation.
Like a bucket hat.
And they were pulled so far down that you could hardly see their face.
Like a bucket hat.
Maybe. Now, women, the Majas, wore light and airy materials. They wore a tight bodice. They also wore a basquina, which is basically a top petticoat. And they wore that over a skirt. And sometimes that skirt was as short as mid-calf. Oh no. Showing the ankles. Uh-oh. Okay. So if these looks sound intimidating, they were supposed to be. They were supposed to be a big finger to the big wigs.
Or a tall sock. A tall sock and a short pants / long shorts to the big wigs.
Oh, the look, yeah.
I'm looking at this guy in his bucket hat and his tall socks and his long shorts. It looks like a little homie. I'm just going to say it.
You know what? Maybe
he could be a little homie.
Maybe there's something to that.
Okay.
I don't know. Well, so many of the Frenchified nobles took offense to this because they were supposed to be the best, right? They were supposed to be la crème de la crème, right? Literally,
they're smearing cream on their wigs.
That is actually a French term meaning the best of the best, actually.
Yeah, okay.
So now you have some low-wage ass worker rejecting your fine tastes. How dare they? How dare they? So this is now a class war, but they made it fashion. For now. However, there were also many nobles that were like, that's kind of a cute look that those pores have put together. It's original and it's edgy. So they began appropriating the Majo style, right? Much like fashion designers will appropriate street style today. It was trendy. But there was also an added freedom for a noble to dress in the Majo style.
Okay.
So they could easily hide their social standing when they were out and about because they don't want the paparazzi shots. They don't want to be wrecked. They don't want to do any of that. But most importantly, they wanted to shed their French friedness and show their Spanish Eurobilly pride.
Show off that Spanish Eurobilly pride.
Exactly.
Sipping on some moonshine that's really a sangria. It was made in a bathtub. Okay. So it kind of signaled an embrace of this backwards, right? The more romantic.
Yep.
All while these Enlightenment ideas continued to saturate in other circles. So romanticism is a little BB, a little Spanish BB, okay? And this was the pendulum swinging the other way.
Okay.
Like we can't all be these Spocks reasoning our way through every decision because we're humans. We're meant to feel things. We're meant to show our humanness. You know, the passion, the emotion, basically like the flight, fight, fuck response that's left over in our lizard brains.
And this Eurobilly fashion is what evolves into the stereotypes that we think of today when we think of Spain, right?
Okay.
Flamenco dancers, matador, bullfighters, your Latina grandma wearing veils to Catholic mass, It's all connected. And we will go into greater detail along with 2 Goya paintings related to the Majas in a future second slice. In 1788, decades after starting his work in the royal court, Goya finally gets a promotion. He is appointed a court painter to King Carlos III.
A very prestigious position. This basically means that he is one of the greatest Spanish painters of his generation, and he whispers thank you to his artworms. Thank you, guys. For a king he was very fond of, being that Goya was an Enlightenment guy, so he was really into the King Carlos Enlightenment guy sort of vibe, right? And King Carlos, we make fun, but for everything he did, he was doing some small but positive changes for the Spanish people, so Goya was a fan. Like, this is a guy I want to work for.
Checks out.
He's got a bromance in his mind. He has a little bromance situation in his mind. They're out hunting together. He's painting him.
Posing for hunting.
It's not actually hunting.
So Goya is holding the same position as the legendary Diego Velázquez, who is one of Goya's biggest inspirations. He now has access to this inner royal circle, right? He's building a network of clout. So he's receiving more and more portrait commissions from members of the aristocracy, but his work is still pretty tame.
Yeah, he's still in that Norman Rockwell phase. He has not traversed into the dark Gary Larson Goya that we love so much.
One such example being the Duke and Duchess of Osuna with their cuatro children from 1788. We have your typical afrancesado family with the powdered wigs and the French-inspired fashion for the whole family.
I don't know what's going on with that cat nipple dress she has there with the jewels.
Yeah.
The giant jewel cat nipple. I don't know how many nipples cats have, but probably around that many.
That is quite the mystery.
Two for every child. Two for every niño.
Yes.
Maybe two for the dogs, too. Oh, that dog. There's another...
There are two dogs in this photo.
That one dog.
Portrait.
That dark dog. Don't look at it. Don't look at it in the eyes.
Don't make eye contact. Yeah. Don't make eye contact. I don't want to look at it anymore. It's very sinister.
I can't stop looking away from it.
So you wouldn't know it from looking at this portrait, but the Duchess was actually pretty rad. She's kind of badass.
She just looks tired there.
I would be tired too, fucking wearing that nipple dress all day.
Well, that's why she got the nipples.
So she also moonlit as a maja. She was very into some taboo things. Okay. From afar, this portrait doesn't look like that great of a painting. Okay, but the figures are kind of stiff.
They still have those El Palele straw bodies, those noodly straw bodies. And the portrait, it's kind of fuzzy. It's hazy once again. Like he's using a soft makeup brush to blur out all the crow's feet. Right. You know, all the imperfections. Like the Photoshop filters turned up way too far.
Yes. Got a little carried away, like we sometimes do. Not gonna lie, this soft, fuzzy light and the sort of cosmic background.
Yeah, it's like a cosmic earth tone, like a close-up of Jupiter's rings.
Yes, I love that. Yes, but this all reminds me of those glamour portraits from the 90s, right? Very, very similarly highlighted backgrounds and glowing skin. I definitely had one.
If you zoom in, though, past the fuzz, past the jewel nipples, past the cosmic mall backdrop, you do see he is using that choppy, painterly brushstroke he became so well known for, a la Velázquez, is one of his favorite painters. And he continues to do this for the rest of his career. So it's in there, it's just kind of lost in that fuzz. It's very similar to the way John Singer Sargent would paint decades later, with that choppy, semi-abstract brush mark. The ideology checks out there because he was definitely looking at both Goya and Velázquez.
The way that he captures details, like the light on the gold buttons or the texture of the bougie fabric is just chef's kiss.
But seriously, Stephanie, why does a baby have a gold button?
Because
it's just gonna get baby snot on it.
The baby royals deserve the bestest.
Yeah, okay. You have to polish that tarnished gold button.
Tarnished from the baby snot?
From the baby snot,
Someone's got to do it.
It's very acidic.
Someone's got to. Listeners, you might be wondering, what the hell does any of this have to do with
I'm
Los
starting
Caprichos?
to wonder myself, yes.
Well, the answer is everything, because everyone involved, RC Squared, King Carlos III, the French, the Spanish people, including the Majos, all have a stake in Spain's future and identity. But how does Goya have a place in any of this, right? He's just a royal painter, right? Well, Like how photographer Cati Orna was a mirror to the effects of the Spanish Civil War, Goya too would wipe away the rosy Vaseline from his mirror.
The red Vaseline stained from roses that you smear atop your lens that you look through the world with.
Right. So he's getting away from that. And instead, he's going to portray the dark realities that were not woven into those palace tapestries.
Finally. Okay, so picture this. He's in the palace observing these royals. He's slowly painting their portraits. He's hanging out with them all day. I mean, awful, right? He's really getting a peek behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Like maybe one he didn't want to see.
Correct.
He loved
TMI.
King Carlos, but it's one of those situations like don't meet your heroes, right? But he's also on the streets observing the Majos, observing the clergy, the beggars, like all that sort of inequality that's happening in Spain. Mm-hmm. And he's starting to see his own position in this whole societal order, probably more clearly than ever thanks to those Enlightenment ideals circulating.
On an autumn day in 1792, Goya finds himself in Sevilla, the largest city of Andalusia, the southernmost region of Spain. And while there isn't an exact written account of Goya's time there, we can imagine. We can imagine the sun warming his face as he strolls by an enormous cathedral, combination of Moorish and Gothic architecture, where he is greeted by the Giraldillo, a goddess figure in the form of a weather vane, at the top of the looming church tower. The sound of dogs barking, vendors bartering, and horse carriages that normally echo off the surrounding stone buildings are all suddenly harder to decipher as a creeping ringing filled his ears. Everything around him seemed to tilt, to blur. Losing his balance, his hands instinctively reached to cover the ringing, turning to buzzing in his ears. The buzzing turns to an unbearable vacuum-like pressure. Concerned onlookers, a shadow of the Giraldillo swaying from atop her tower. Goya collapses to the ground, everything amplifying until it became complete silence.
So listeners, that is going to do it for us today. We'll be back soon with part 2 of Goya. The featured music today was from A Tape Full of Mistakes from Rows of Loyalty Freak Music. We will link it in the show notes.
Also, an extra special thank you to all of our patrons who help us make Art Slice.
Thank you.
Yes. Join our small but excellent group of fine folks over on patreon.com/artslicepod.
And let us know what you thought about the work. Also, share your work with us. We like to see your work. We like to see what you're making.
And we like to share it.
We do, yes.
And no.
Your
kid could not have painted those jeweled nipples.
Bye.
Bye.
Is this cringe?
Is this cringe? Let us know.
Is this cringe? Let us know in the comments. Are you a 16 or 17-year-old just cringing out of your body right now? Let us know in the All right, bye.
Bye. Beep. You know what they would be doing?
What?
They would either go, ugh, or they would...
No, they bash their phone against the brick
No, they're
wall.
not going to destroy their phone because they're feeling cringe. No, that's not how that goes.
Well, they're having an existential cringe crisis.
That's funny.
Okay, yeah.
That's not...